And he is here to talk to me about a few really important issues, including notice. Today, we did not get a ruling on the CASA case that questions birthright citizenship, but that is expected to come either tomorrow or later this week. Fun fact, I worked at CASA when we filed that lawsuit. I was in the first hearing for the national injunction, and so I've been following that.
Which direction do you think it's going to go?
You know what? They gave us a lot of softball wins today, so I'm a little concerned that they'll hit us with a major blow. But, I'm also one of those people who deep down believes that there are opportunities for people to do good, and they might
win
surprise us.
so often. Right there.
It is. It is right there, and they do. I mean, if anybody had any reason to give up on politicians ever doing the right thing, I'm one of those. Everything I went through in Florida with DeSantis. So it's but I don't.
Yeah.
I'm still out here.
I appreciate that.
All right. So we're going to get into the first couple of questions. One, it's very hot today. DC is set to either meet or break its heat record for July, which was set in 2011. It's going to be 104 degrees on Friday.
Also, you can taste
it's
the
moist. Air. It's moist. And I grew up in Louisiana and Mississippi, and it's really moist out here, which is why my hair curled despite my best efforts. So on the planet, or our country's 250-year anniversary, our planet's basically running a temperature of 101 degrees. And there, especially with this administration, but in general, doesn't seem to be any urgency to address that. So what would you specifically do in your role as a senator to address that?
So we have to address the crisis. And in order to address the crisis, we have to find the points of alignment between the long-term crisis, not even that long-term, but the ongoing crisis of climate change and the short-term affordability crisis that people face in their lives. And we can make energy way more affordable by investing full-scale renewable energy in solar, in wind, in geothermal. We can bring down the cost of energy. We can also create a whole bunch of energy jobs. I think part of the challenge we've had is that the conversation we tend to have about the climate crisis is about the climate crisis, which is long range, feels disconnected from your daily life. And bad faith actors tend to use that disconnect to make the argument that somehow we're going to increase the price of your electricity or take away your job, which is actually exactly the opposite.
That's happening already.
You're right, exactly.
That's already happening.
They're literally taking Exxon Mobil dollars to bring offline projects that would have created jobs and would have reduced your energy. So for us, we've got to be focused 100% on articulating the broad goal of taking on the climate crisis. In the short-term goal of right now, you pay too much for energy because we don't have renewable energy opportunities and options for you. And right now, we're taking away jobs that could be available in your community if we were to invest in this.
All right, let's go to one again today. So the key question everybody's going to want answered is, do you support expanding the court, putting term limits? What is your plan to overhaul?
This is a bit of a back of the envelope sort of calculus here, and I'm not a jurist, I'm a doctor. But here's what I would think. I think that you should limit the term to a 10-year term with one 10-year renewal. And then you offer every president 3 appointments, which they can use either to appoint somebody new or to renew somebody who's already on the court.
Would that allow them to remove someone from the court in order to do that new appointment?
No. So you would have a naturally expanding court, but it would address a bunch of disincentives. The thing we hate about the court right now is you got 9, you're limited to 9. Once you have this kind of incentive, everybody's incentivized to appoint the most athletic kid graduating from Harvard or Yale Law School, right? And they can be ideological extremists because there is no accountability down the line. And people stay way past when it's appropriate to stay, right? And it's Russian roulette for a president. There have been presidents who have 0 appointments, and there are presidents who have 3, right? So this would make sure that the appointment process follows the political process. Every president gets 3. It would mean that because you only have a 10-year term, your incentive is to appoint the best person for the job. And if you have an option for renewal, at least in the first 10 years, you have an incentive to hew to the Constitution because you don't know who's going to be president when your term comes up, right? And so I think it addresses a lot of the disincentives we have. And then there's the opportunity to just allow the court to grow with time.
Would you suggest any revisions to Supreme Court confirmation process. We used to obviously have the 60 vote, which meant that you had to have someone that at least a couple of the opposing party had to agree on.
Yeah.
We no longer have that. Do you support putting that back in place?
I oppose the filibuster generally, but in this particular, like for confirmations, I actually think it's more important to have more broad agreement. So that'd be interesting to like abolish the filibuster, but for confirmation process. I actually think like, yeah, but even for the confirmation process more generally, right? Like, so, I think it's helpful to have some sort of bipartisan accountability around the people who operate government. And, yeah, so that's an interesting question. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way. That's a really good question.
Speaking of accountability, what do you think about possible impeachment or other accountability measures for those who obviously are taking kickbacks?
Violent basic ethics?
Yes.
Yes. I think we need a clear ethical requirement. And I actually think we need to, like, what is, as the conservative friends always remind us, what is a law if you're not going to enforce it? So it's a law if you're not going to enforce it. And when it comes to the court, they talk about their vaunted self-appoint or self uh, enforcement process that never actually operates. So clearly, it's not working. Clearly, you've had a cozy relationship between Supreme Court justices and people who want something from the court. And just like every other political actor, there needs to be some level of accountability. But you have that job for life and nobody can take it away from you. Then you start to pull the shenanigans that too many in the court have pulled.
Which actually kind of brings me to my next one. I'm making sure that I get every point right. I'm a scientist, so I
love that for us.
Very judicious. So your AI plan was released today, and you, in an interview, said that you're not afraid of the millions that might be thrown against you with you taking that position because you've already got APAC and other corporate PACs throwing millions. I think APAC's over 2 million against you.
APAC has done 23 million. Yeah, the reporting on that article we probably have to do something about because it's 23 million.
Yeah, I was about to say 2 sounds small. Two is like a rural Mississippi case free.
No. 23 million.
23 million.
They called me the most dangerous candidate for the U.S. Israel relationship. And they will likely spend double that in the next month.
So how will you, because Michigan is not always a clear-cut state for Democrats, how will you overcome that targeted spending in a general?
Because remember, like, there's a law of diminishing returns. Once they call you what they want to call you, what's them calling it to you again?
I think I always make up new stuff. I mean, they're really good at just making up new things.
But like, the other thing about it is when they do that, they give you attention.
Yes.
And when they give you attention, you have the opportunity to take that attention and point it back. So AIPAC's already doing it. The AI PACs are going to come and try too. But what's the upside? Is that you actually get to speak truth about what people need and deserve. And I'll be honest with you, I've been up and down my state. I've done 400 plus public events. I've done 110 different cities now. And no matter where I go, people ask me the same question about data centers and AI. And I think it's just really important for us to realize that you are talking about technology that could existentially corrode the social contract on which we've lived for a very long time. It could cause existential doom to humanity. And if we're operating, allowing these billionaires to be fundamentally unaccountable to anybody, advancing this technology, that is a very dangerous situation. And all we're proposing is that we need some democratic control of a technology that the AI corporations and their CEOs themselves say would take 50% of the jobs as we know them and could cause existential doom to humanity. So I'm just saying that, like, democracy is an old technology, but it's a pretty good one. And if I got to choose between democracy and AI, I'm picking democracy.
So one of the things I noticed is that your AI plan focuses almost exclusively on regulatory power. So ways that you would have it be governed, ways that the ownership would split up. And like a previous plan from Bernie Sanders, you're going to want to take 50% of that revenue and give it back to people. Your plan looks, I think, specifically at healthcare, small business loans, and what's probably the other two. Mind everything.
Yeah, so healthcare, small business loans, retraining programs. But like the big picture here is that I love the Sanders proposal that takes 50% of the ownership of these corporations and puts it in a sovereign wealth fund so that you can divvy some of that back out. What we're proposing is an additional amount of democratic control for AI that we're going to completely pull the AI hyperscale labs from existing big tech. So forcing the Metas and the Googles and the Microsofts of the world to disinvest, reform them as public interest corporations, and then have a system of democratic appointment to boards so that the majority of your board is publicly accountable, right? And I think that changes the governance of AI itself. Then we also stipulate some of the things that AI shouldn't be able to do, some of the ways that we want to test AI to make sure it's not capable of creating existential harm to humanity, and that we want to take some of that funding and invest it both in a dividend to just everyday people, just cash, but then also invest it in making sure that people can still find good work even as AI continues to proliferate.
How would you do things differently than, the attempts previously made to regulate social media? And not as far, as
I mean,
much as
we
that,
didn't
but
get there.
we didn't get.
We never got there.
So what's the
And like
difference with now?
the difference is, and I'm not bought off by them. And like we're actually talking about doing it. I mean, the problem that we had with social media is that too many senators didn't understand how social media worked in the first place. And then a lot of the ones we did were bought off by it. Like, we can't make the same mistake when it comes to AI. The best I can do is I'm not bought off. I don't take corporate money. The AI super PACs are going to spend, huge amounts of money likely to try and beat me, and I understand how this thing works. And so, like, that's what leadership is for. Leadership is supposed to have a broader conversation about where we want to go and then take us there, right? And so we need like-minded folks getting elected into these bodies so that we can actually spur a conversation about the kind of regulation we need. I mean, here's the crazy thing I just want you to think about. Like, it's been less than 4 years since ChatGPT came out. And we're talking about like leaps and bounds for what this technology can do. Think about what happens in the next 4 years if we don't regulate now. We need action. We've needed action. And I'm not going to stand idly by and just, stay quiet while I think this is the existential question of our time. Like, how do we regulate AI? So we propose a plan. Folks have better plans. They can put them out too. But I'm not afraid of the AI super PACs coming out and trying to beat us because at the end of the day, like, money talks only a little bit in politics. People talk in politics. And, my appeal is to the broader everyday people. So if you like the plan, if you like the idea of regulating AI, go to our website, ship us off $5 because I'm up against the big guys.
Yeah, and regulate possibly one of the most popular and bipartisan positions right now because
That
of
part.
its rapid expansion. My one question about that was you have the legislative part down, but one of the major concerns is the rapid expansion of infrastructure.
Yeah.
Should some of that money that's taken from these AI companies go back to remediate the damage that's done by building those
That's a
facilities?
really good point. We put out terms of engagement so that you limit the damage on the front end. No touching our water resources, no increasing our ratepayer fees. You're going to have to put money up front for public interest projects that are negotiated in good faith. But you're right, like there's been a lot of damage done. And, I believe in holding corporate polluters accountable, regardless if those corporate polluters are, data center operators or folks who polluted our water with PFAS in Michigan.
That brings me to pretty much my last one, which is more fun. So you were
It's having fun. I've been having a great time.
they're very serious, though. They're very serious. I know everybody knows me as like the Debbie Downer because the only time
Policy can be fun.
for 2 years, the only time people saw me was when something really bad was happening with COVID. And so now I'm kind of like always this bearer of bad news, but this is good stuff. So you were in public health. You were 29 or 30 years old when you were appointed to be the head of the Detroit public health administration, which requires a certain amount of grit, determination, and talent. So by entering politics, you feel like you're walking away from that career because that is a hard thing to do. I mean, I was a managerial position at 30 for a state health agency,
Yeah.
nothing like that.
So, you know, public health is a framework for understanding how we keep people healthy and wellness. And in that role, I kept coming up against all of the structural imbalances in the system that make people sick in the first place and keep them from being able to get the healthcare that they need when they get sick. And I was sitting in my office the day they froze federal funds trying to figure out how to keep my WIC program afloat, how to keep vaccines in arms, how to keep my federally qualified health centers open. And you look at the guy who runs health for the country, a dude who works out famously in jeans, who only knows enough about science to use big words the wrong way.
Just
And
enough to be dangerous.
exactly. And I think we need a public health senator. I'd be the first ever public health official to serve in the US Senate. And so in some respects, it's not that I'm walking away from public health. It's that I hope to bring public health to the US Senate where we can actually use it as a framework to pass laws and ask questions about how we keep people healthy in the first place and how we build a healthcare system where everybody gets the healthcare that they need and deserve. Public health, the definition, as you know, is what we as a society do collectively to ensure conditions for people to be healthy. And that starts with the laws we write. Starts with the way we enforce those laws. And I think we need that perspective in the US Senate. So I hope to be able to take that to the Senate rather than to walk away from it at all.
Everyone knows I'm a big proponent of scientists being elected to Congress. It's my own little bias. Although I'm in climate science, I segued into public health by a very strange circumstances that didn't work out so well for me. My very last final question to ask everybody is, and this is a little weird, if you're in public health, so you're gonna have to stretch it. What's your favorite Earth phenomenon? Why? Coolest thing that happens on this planet? Why?
There are so many cool ones.
It's got to be Earth based though. It can't be people based. It's
No,
not
no,
something we do
no,
on it.
no, no. Um, I've got a couple in my mind, and I'm trying to like real time run like a little simulation,
Elephant.
like which one's cooler. Um, just think, I think flying through clouds is one of the most inspiring things. Like when your flight takes off and you're looking out the window and you're like going through the clouds. So like cloud formation and the fact that, we consistently watch as the earth takes a shower and that you get to like fly through it. And this is H2O that under any circumstance should likely be in liquid form, but it's in gas form and you can fly through it like without getting wet. I just think that's really cool.
It's
So
cool. It is really cool. I love clouds. They're squarely in my storm agenda. So if there's anything else you want to add, things that people should know,
yeah,
my following's very climate based, so they're going to want to hear about that. But also democracy, save it.
yeah, climate is a public health issue, but public health is also an earth justice issue. I spent a lot of my time in Detroit taking on corporate polluters for a reason, because every uh, climate relevant gas that comes out of a smokestack gets sieved through the lungs of our babies. So we put air quality monitors all over our county. We took on some of the biggest polluters in our communities. And if we're serious about taking on the climate crisis, we've got to be serious about situating it in the lives of real people. Because for a lot of people, we'll have this debate about 1.5 degrees or 2 degrees. We'll have this debate about the melting of the ice caps, but that's not real for a lot of people. I think we just got to make it really real. And then I think we need people who are going to go out and be champions and fight on these issues in spaces and places and in communities where these things aren't talked about all that often. So I hope I can earn your support. I am running for US Senate. Go to abdulpercentage.com/donate to chip us off a couple of bucks. You know who I'm up against. APAC, all the corporate PACs. I've never taken a dime of corporate money in my life. I never will. And if you want to volunteer with us, we've got 5 weeks left to go. Folks sign up for volunteers.
All right. Well, thank you guys for tuning in, and thank you, Doctor,
Thank you
for your time.
Appreciate you.